GPT 5.5 is the missing piece that finally puts OpenAI one step ahead of Anthropic. The reason for this is the focus on knowledge work, computer use, but most importantly, its incredible token efficiency. That's what we're going to get into. So if we go into the Artificial Analysis Intelligence Index here, which is an index of a variety of benchmarks, we see that GPT 5.5 is, as of now, the state-of-the-art model, outperforming every other model. Now, this isn't the interesting headline, because every other week, these models outperform each other with every new release. So that's not very interesting. What is more interesting is looking at the specific benchmarks where GPT 5.5 makes a very significant improvement relative to 5.4 and Opus 4.7, because this gives us an idea of where OpenAI is trying to go. Now, the benchmark that stands out to me here is the GDPVal Benchmark. And that is because this is a benchmark that tests for real-world tasks in terms of knowledge work. It is a benchmark where the model is attached to an open source harness that has access to the web, that has access to Shell. And what they basically have it do is they have it go out and do the kind of tasks that you would do in an actual job. It spans across 44 different occupations, 9 different sectors. Think of things like a lawyer or a registered nurse, an accountant. And what they do is have the model go and do the kind of tasks that you would do in those jobs. And then they give it an ELO score and look at its performance. And on that benchmark, GPT 5.5 is now the leading benchmark, model ahead of Opus 4.7. This is whereas, if you look here, GPT 5.4, one release before this, was still trailing behind Claude Sonnet 4.6. So this is a clear signal from OpenAI that they're now entering the domain that used to be dominated by Claude. Claude is known as the model that you use for serious enterprise level work, right? If you want to get work done, you use Claude. If you want to talk to your AI girlfriend and make funny SpongeBob videos, then you can use ChatGPT. But if you want to get work done, you use Claude. Even though, Codex was always pretty good, this was sort of the narrative. From what I'm seeing here, this is a clear play from OpenAI to destroy that narrative, and I think they're doing so successfully. If we look at their own language, they make the same point, right? In Codex, GPT 5.5 is better than GPT 5.4 at generating documents, spreadsheets, slide presentations. Alpha testers said it outperformed past models on work like operational research, spreadsheet modeling, and turning messy business inputs into plans. When combined with computer use, GPT 5.5 brings us closer to the feeling that the model can actually use the computer with you. So this is a clear play from them, moving directly into the knowledge workspace. And also here they reference the GDPVal Benchmark. GPT 5.5 reaches state-of-the-art performance across multiple benchmarks that reflect this kind of knowledge work. On GDPVal, it scores 84.9%. On OS World Verified, it scores a 78.7%. This is the benchmark that tests the model's ability to use the computer. This is computer use. The next improvement that makes 5.5 significantly competitive when it comes to knowledge work is something that we don't talk about enough, and that is long context retrieval, right? So these are all benchmarks that relate to long context retrieval, and what you will see is that the leaps from 5.4 to 5.5 are quite significant, with some of the benchmarks actually going from even 36% to 74%. So GPT 5.5 has a context window of 1 million tokens, which is great. But the ability for a model to be able to retrieve specific information within the context window is incredibly important. Having a context window that's 1 million tokens isn't that useful if the retrieval of specific information in that working memory, in that context window, is very poor, right? I remember also that with a longer context window, the signal to noise ratio is actually worse because you have a lot more tokens in the context window. So the ability for the model, right, to be able to retrieve specific information from that context window, right, is incredibly important, especially with knowledge work, right? Knowledge work is context work. You're dealing with multiple tools in parallel, right? Retrieving things from this spreadsheet and from that spreadsheet, then retrieving things from your CRM, trying to bring that all together in a PowerPoint. This is the kind of work that GPT 5.5 using Codex is going to be doing and does really well. And it can't do that without that very, very, very high level ability to be able to retrieve things, right, within a very long context window with a high level of accuracy, right? And we see here that GPT 5.5 just makes a very significant step. Now, the caveat here is obviously that on this one, for example, Claude Opus 4.7 still scores better, still outperforms GPT 5.5. So you might be wondering, like, okay, if you look at it across the board, right, when it comes to this long context, right? GPT 5.5 is a significant improvement, but it's still sort of competing sort of in the same level as Claude Opus 4.7. And then with the GDPVal, okay, it performs better than 4.7, but not by that much. So what is the big step? What is the big difference? Well, the big difference is token efficiency. So the first thing we have to mention if we're going to be talking about GPT 5.5 is the pricing. The pricing has doubled, right? You now, instead of paying $250 per million tokens, it is now $5 per million tokens on input. On cached input, it is also a double of 25 cents to 50 cents. And on output, it has gone from $15 to $30 per million tokens. So it isn't doubled. However, GPT 5.5 is right now the most token efficient state-of-the-art model. It is the most efficient model at its level. You can see that here, where in terms of token usage, so you look here at the output of tokens used for a certain level on the index, a certain level of reasoning, a certain level of capability on the index, we actually see that on a higher level, GPT 5.5, at a higher score on the index, actually uses less tokens. So to score higher, right, on the index, it actually needs less tokens than GPT 5.4, its predecessor, and also less tokens than Claude Opus 4.7. So it uses less tokens to get more done. And this is the powerful step. This also tells us why OpenAI decided to increase the price. Yes, but this tells us a lot about where OpenAI intends to compete, right? We've all been dealing with the Claude rate limits and the usage limits and running into all these limits. I think this is a clear play from OpenAI with GPT 5.5 to focus on making a model that is incredibly efficient, which is also very important for knowledge work, right? You're dealing with a context window that gets filled up. You're dealing with multiple tools, all these different tokens that you might be using. You want to be very efficient in the usage of tokens to get things done, right? So we see here as well, output tokens used to run Artificial Analysis Intelligence Index, where they mentioned that GPT 5.5 uses 40% fewer output tokens to run our index than its predecessor. That is almost half, which again tells us why they doubled the price. But it's again, almost half of the tokens needed to run the same index and perform better on said index, which is incredibly impressive. Artificial Analysis mentions here, GPT 5.5 Medium scores the same as Claude Opus 4.7 Max on our intelligence index at 1/4 of the cost, $1,200 versus $4,800. And if we were to illustrate this, imagine you had a task that cost you $4,800 in terms of tokens using Opus 4.7. The same amount of tokens. If you're going to use the same amount of tokens with GPT 5.5, right, which is more expensive because the per token input cost is higher, it would actually cost you about $5,800. However, the actual result is that, according to Artificial Analysis, is that it would really cost you $1,200, right? It would cost you $1,200 because it uses less tokens. So the price per token is higher, but it needs less tokens to get the task done, right? And there, as a result of that, it actually costs you less money to run. It really is a mindset shift from moving from cost per token to thinking in terms of cost per task completed, right? And this is a very interesting case that OpenAI is making, which is also very much a business case, very much a knowledge work case. If you're going to be doing knowledge work, you're going to be using up a lot of tokens going across multiple tools. Knowledge work is the kind of work that's done by people who are not necessarily very technical, who are not optimizing for token usage. These are people who are working behind a desk, a lawyer, a registered nurse, like mentioned before. You want to be very token efficient, right? When working in that way, which is also, again, a business case in terms of cost for businesses that want to utilize this tool. So if we bring it all together, the play from OpenAI starts to become more clear. The Codex app gets released as the command center for agents. This is their answer to Claude's desktop app. GPT 5.4 has native computer use. Codex for almost everything. This is their answer to Claude Cowork, right? No longer just Codex for programming and coding, but Codex for all forms of knowledge work. Improved background computer use, richer plugin access, richer file previews. Then workspace agents. This is their answer to Claude Manage agents, right? This is the ability to create agents that exist in the cloud, meaning they work even while you're not there, even while the device is off, but also they are shared. So it's a shared cloud where along with your team, you can collaborate on an agent. You can build various iterations of it and access it via Slack. A clear play again into knowledge work. And then now with GPT 5.5, with the longer context window, the improved computer use, the improved knowledge work capability, and the improved context retrieval, right, with more efficient token usage, This is very clear from OpenAI that they aim to compete in the domain that has been dominated by Claude for a while now, by Anthropic for a while now, and at perfect timing, at a time where lots of people, including myself, are complaining about the rate limits that we're getting when it comes to using Claude Code. So that is everything that stood out to me when it comes to this release. OpenAI clearly aiming to make themselves competitive once again when it comes to knowledge work at an enterprise level. The thing that puts them one step ahead, in my opinion, is the incredible efficiency in terms of token usage. At a time where we're all frustrated with Claude rate limits and usage limits, I think this is a great play from OpenAI that really sort of closes the loop along with all the different releases that they've done, the Codex app, the parallel agents, the workspace agents, and now a model that is incredibly efficient, has long context, and excellent context retrieval. I think this puts them in square competition with Claude once again. So let me know what you think. If you agree, disagree, leave behind in the comments. If you like the video, please like the video. And if you got any value out of this, please subscribe. Thank you very much. Until next time.